Hi, today I want to talk a little bit about what I would consider to be a mental disorder. And it's an entire ideology, it's a political movement. It has a big place in both the Democrat and Republican parties, and it threatens to bankrupt the United States. It threatens to end the world with World War III. It's an ideology, but I would go so far as to say it's an actual mental disorder that's also a political ideology. And I've met a lot of the leaders within this movement. What I'm talking about is neoconservatism. And so neoconservatism is the belief that the United States, which constitutes 4% of the world population, has the right, the will, and some people maybe even think preordained by God himself to control the whole world. Well, my response and reaction to that is that it can't, it won't, and it's delusional to think that the United States, which constitutes 4% of the world, should, can, and will control the entire world. So they're willing to bankrupt the United States. They're willing to start wars, unconstitutional wars, in order to implement this losing proposition, this belief that the United States can and will and should control the world is an absurdity. So I want to react to Mark Dice because he did a great video on this, and I think he's going to bring out a lot of points. So I'm going to react to him and just probably endorse most of what he's saying here.
Few conservatives today know that there are actually two basic kinds of conservatives, and the movement, along with the Republican Party, split into two different factions beginning back in the 1960s, resulting in the neocons, the neoconservatives, or the new conservatives, taking control. Neocons are similar to rhinos.
So they just showed Dick Cheney, just so you know, Dick Cheney behind closed doors upon several occasions said, deficits don't matter. We can bankrupt the whole country. Deficits don't matter, in order to implement his perpetual wars, his forever wars. Of course, Dick Cheney endorsed the Afghanistan war, which lasted 20 years. We call them forever wars. And also, of course, the Iran war, because, of course, he basically was insinuating that Iran caused that Iraq caused the 9/11 attacks. So let's just go on here because Mark's bringing out a lot of great points, and the level of delusional behavior is really shocking if you really analyze these people.
Republican in name only, but are particularly interested in foreign policy and are known for being war hawks who use the military-industrial complex to intervene in the affairs of foreign countries. They are globalists as opposed to nationalists, although they portray themselves as patriotic by flexing America's military power and sending other people's kids to war while theirs hang out in the coffee bar.
And that's the thing. I think they abuse the heck out of the religious right, and they get the religious right to support their unconstitutional, illegal, forever wars. And I think the religious right and good Christians in the United States are being totally used by the neoconservative movement. And keep in mind, with the Iraq War Part 2, I reached out to John Kerry. I got a personal letter from him endorsing the Iraq II war. Of course, Hillary Clinton voted in favor of that war. So this has basically nothing to do with political parties. Both major political parties have plenty of neoconservatives.
At Ivy League universities. Paleoconservatives, on the other hand, are the true conservatives.
That's correct. I believe he's correct, saying that paleoconservatives are truly conservative, because the opposite of conservatism from the dictionary description of conservatism is we're conservative. We don't like risk. We don't like entering dark rooms and we don't know who's in there and turning the light on and potentially getting attacked. We don't like the question marks and the ambiguity of warfare. So let's see what else he says.
They're the traditionalist Americans who tend to be Christian and oppose open borders and the LGBTQ agenda and have a strong sense of national pride. Instead of being concerned with nation building and foreign countries, they prefer a more isolationist foreign policy and focus on localism. In other words, they don't support wars in the Middle East, like the war in Iraq or the latest flare-up between Israel and Gaza, not just because wars are almost always started by lies, but because paleoconservatives don't want the United States sticking its nose in other countries' business. And
so it's interesting. Some of the writings of George Washington, his departure speech, for example, talked about getting involved in overseas entanglements and how that could easily destroy the entire country. And you think about how prophetic our first president was when he warned us, and we're not heeding that warning. Another warning, of course, would be Eisenhower when he left office before John Kennedy became president. Upon his departure speech, he coined the term and created the phrase military-industrial complex, where he basically, if you read between the lines, was saying that they are so powerful, they will invent wars from nothing because they make money from wars. So Eisenhower was very, very deeply concerned. And it's too bad that it took Kennedy a couple of years before he was really up to speed with those threats. So let's see what else is here.
Wasting our money and our resources on foreign countries' problems. There are some other nuanced differences as well, such as paleoconservatives tend to oppose free trade, which they see as harming America's manufacturing sector by allowing cheap goods to be imported from foreign countries without making them pay tax.
If you can see right behind me, I have an old Ross Perot sign. And Ross Perot, in the debates, he was saying, I can hear the giant sucking sound of jobs leaving the United States. And he was absolutely correct. So the NAFTA and all of these trade deals, all they did was export jobs, and they actually had tax incentives. These large corporations were incentivized to send jobs overseas. It's been just a complete nightmare. And then paleoconservatives have been proven right on that. So let's see what else Mark says.
Tariffs, and instead support what's called trade protectionism. The term paleo means older or ancient, just like the paleo diet refers to a diet humans are believed to have eaten during the Paleolithic era a long time ago, and is used to differentiate traditionalist or classical conservatives from the new or the neoconservatives, the neocons. This is the kind of...
So it's interesting. So Mark's bringing out a point here, and I've got a background in political science, and I've held elected offices, blah, blah, blah. This is not about me. This is just about the reality of what neoconservatism is, which it's a nightmare. They're claiming to be conservative, but they're anything but conservative. What do conservatives want? They want, if you have $1, you don't spend $1.50. So, but all the neoconservatives, they want to just deficit-funded wars, going to war with money that doesn't exist, destroying our children's futures by having them inherit a country that is bankrupt, and largely bankrupt because of these wars. And of course, they're totally against Congress having an up and down vote in favor or against war, because they also hate the Constitution. So neoconservatives believe that the United States, that's 4% of the world population, has the right and the ability and the will, and as many claim ordained by God, to control the whole world. And they just can't, and they won't, and they lose every war. The United States has lost every military entanglement since World War II, in Korea, in Vietnam, Iran, Iraq, Afghanistan. Everything that these neocons have tried to do has blown up in their faces. And also with Hillary Clinton deposing the leaders in Libya, Muammar Gaddafi, and laughing and joking when he was murdered. And now the result of Hillary Clinton, Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, under Barack Obama, when Barack was president, is that you can purchase slaves on street corners in Libya. So that's the end result of the neoconservatism implementation nightmare, whatever you want to call it. So let's continue.
Nuts and bolts material that you'll find in my new book, The War on Conservatives. Aside from keeping up with the day-to-day news or the fake news, it's also important to know your history and knowing where you were.
He talks about the war on conservatives, because it's the war on true, real conservatives. Because a real conservative it's interesting. A true liberal just believes in a lot of personal freedom, but a conservatism and liberalism are not absolute polar opposites from a textbook perspective. So the opposite of conservatism is absolutely postmodernism, and everyone should know what that word means. Postmodernism, not liberalism. Postmodernism just means let's destroy all our traditions and start off on a clean slate without ever testing anything. And obviously, I can tell that you think any real conservative, paleoconservative like me, we absolutely despise postmodernism. So let's continue here.
helps us understand where we are and gives us a much better perspective on things. So hopefully we can navigate our way in conservatism. Ben Shapiro, for example, is a staunch neocon who supported legalizing gay marriage, and he tries downplaying that position to conservative audiences by saying he wouldn't personally attend a gay wedding, but he does support it as an institution. In response to somebody who claimed that he didn't, he answered that he is.
Of course, Ben Shapiro is very, very radically pro-Israel. I would say blindly so. And that's another thing, is the paleoconservatives are very, very, very loyal to perpetual warfare in the Middle East. Every war that Israel gets involved with, the neoconservatives are in favor. They're always in favor of every war. So let's just see what else he's saying here.
He's been libertarian on same-sex marriage for years before Obergefell, referring to the 2015 Supreme Court case, which ultimately legalized it. And Ben Shapiro, like all neocons, supports any Middle Eastern war or military action that would either directly or indirectly.
Yeah, so a true neoconservative, such as John McCain, such as Dick Cheney, such as Hillary Clinton, such as John Kerry on the Democrat side, Hillary Clinton, obviously Democrat, they just never saw a war they didn't like. They just war. And very important, because I grew up a Democrat. I grew up with, in Massachusetts with the governor of the state of Massachusetts in my living room. John Kennedy's friends, one of his best friends was a good friend of my dad. So I grew up very Democrat and more conservative, obviously. Now I'm not a Democrat, but it's not one party. It's both political parties, and it's a delusional belief, and it could cause World War III, and it could destroy the world as we know it, because they're even in favor of the neoconservatives of nuclear war.
Protect Israel. Now we're getting into some controversial material here, but you really should read what's going on in my new book to get the full story. The neocons were the ones who concocted the weapons of mass destruction hoax and the lie that Saddam Hussein had a relationship with Al-Qaeda to dupe the American people and the rest of the world into going along with the invasion of Iraq in 2003 to...
You can accuse me of any... Ooh, you're a neocon. Or you must be a militarist. You want intervention. All the...
So Mark Levin, I would go so far as to say he's off his rocker. And it's just, he's been off his rock for quite a while. This is prior to the latest neocon war against Iran, where we're helping Israel go to war with Iran. Now, I keep in mind, Iran is 92 million people. And when we go to war with Iran, it's very important to realize that we're at war with Russia and China indirectly, because they're supporting Iran. So we're not only at war with Iran, but to be at war with Iran is quite a challenge, because it is 92 million people. And there have been senators being interviewed that have no idea that Iran is such a big country. And they're in favor of a war against a country that they don't know the size of, or probably even the location of. Okay. So
the time intervention? No. The neocons. Soldiers are the neocons. I'm sick of this anti-Semitic bullcrap.
Oh, so to be a neoconservative, according to Mark Levin, is to be anti-Semitic, which I don't even know what anti-Semitic means. I don't think Mark Levin knows what anti-Semitic means. Semitic means that it used to mean that the Israeli people, the Jewish people, should have and will have a homeland. And they did that in 1948. They started the Israeli state. Many people believe the Israeli state was started with ethnic cleansing, saying you don't live here anymore, get out. But whatever, we're not going to get into that. But of course, if that was proven true, what I said, the neoconservatives are okay with it. They just look the other way. So let's see what else Mark says.
Not neocons.
There's so much more. You really have to read my new book. But few people make the distinction anymore between neocons and paleoconservatives, because the neocons want to purge the paleoconservatives from the Republican Party in the 1960s. One of their prime targets was the John Birch Society, which
this is interesting. So the John Birch Society was started in Belmont, Massachusetts, pretty close to where I grew up. And so we're going to look at William.
Born in the late 1950s to oppose communism, but their hard stance against globalists and globalist organizations like the United Nations, the Council on Foreign Relations.
He was the spokesman for conservatism, the spokesman for all things conservative, but he was a total neoconservative, and he was not conservative. And it was just an abomination. What a terrible spokesman the Democrat Party had. And if you want to see something interesting, you can see a debate between him and Noam Chomsky about the Vietnam War. The debate was about 30 years ago, and maybe 35 years ago. And William F. Buckley got destroyed by Noam Chomsky. So it's really interesting to watch. And I'm a conservative saying that William F. Buckley got destroyed, but it's really shocking to watch how they just, the neoconservatives cannot defend their viewpoints. They lose just about every debate. They just have to call you names and call you anti-Semitic or anti-American or whatever it is. They can't debate you on the basis of their lousy ideas.
The Bilderberg Group was seen as a hindrance to the neocon agenda, so they strategically worked to exile them. The remaining paleoconservatives who survived William F. Buckley's purge in the 1960s were mostly pushed out of mainstream Republican politics in the early 1980s as the rift continued to grow. These were people such as Pat Buchanan, Paul Gottfried, Joseph Sobrin, Samuel Francis.
So Pat Buchanan, he wrote a book called The Death of the West. It's right behind me on the bookshelf. So Pat Buchanan ran for president, by the way, in 1992. He won the New Hampshire primary. He scared the heck out of the Bushes, out of George Herbert Walker Bush, and that they were shocked. He won New Hampshire, the first presidential primary. And Pat Buchanan they really demonized him as being anti-Semitic, anti-Jew, or whatever. It's absurd. He just doesn't want the United States to be controlled by Israel. That's all. And he's been talking about this for over 40 years. So he really, really got demonized. And once again, he's called anti-Semitic. What is anti-Semitic? He's critical of, I'm critical of Israeli foreign policy. Does that mean I'm anti-Semitic? I'm sure a lot of the people that would say, yes, I am, have fewer Jewish friends than I do. So let's listen a little more here. But it's so silly that I have to defend myself with how many Jewish or non-Jewish friends I have. It's silly, but let's go here.
Francis, Russell Kirk, as well as organizations like the Rockford Institute and the Philadelphia Society. The John Birch Society is still in existence today, although it's just a shell of its former self and hasn't had any significant power since the 1970s. So for decades, the neocons have been the ones steering much of the Republican Party, until Donald Trump came on the scene and ignited a populist movement and shook.
So here it is here. This is probably the most important thing to realize, that Donald Trump ran under the platform of no more wars, blah, blah, blah. And, no war with Iran. It was obvious that they were pushing for a war with Iran. And now we're at war with Iran. And so basically many, many paleoconservatives like myself are asserting that Donald Trump became a neoconservative, something that we actually don't like. And we actually maybe hate. We hate neoconservatism because they take over what they claim to be conservative, and they're the exact opposite. And they're going to bankrupt the country. They're going to create wars. They're going to kill millions of people that we shouldn't be killing. And under the delusional belief that the United States has the ability to control the whole world, and we will control the world. With the future of the world is multipolar. And it's amazing when you just look at a map. The United States has two major, huge oceans separating us from Asia and Europe. We are so protected in the United States. Why don't we heed George Washington's warning and not get involved in foreign entitlements the way we've been doing? It will destroy the United States. Perhaps it already has. I hope not, but it's just a nightmare. So
Conservative, Chronicles Magazine of American Culture, the Intercollegiate Review, then the NRA. As mainstream conservatism in America continues to drift to the left, we'll likely see a resurgence of paleoconservatism. We're up against neocons who have been working from within the Republican Party to sell out America and sell out our money and our troops overseas to fight wars.
Yeah, so Mark's correct. So what I would recommend is that people that are truly conservative, that believe that if you have $1, you shouldn't spend $1.50. People that don't want perpetual warfare, total war involvement, war or warlike behavior, bombing and blowing stuff up in Iraq has been 30 years. That's a forever war. And also in Afghanistan, that war was officially a total of 20 years. And of course, now we're at war in Iran, and it's going to end next week or the week after. But That's what they say. But very often, all of these wars are claimed to be short wars. Every war, World War I, they went to war in the autumn, and in the end of August, early September, and then they claimed it'll be over by Christmas. Then it went on for years and years and years and years and years. And trench warfare, total nightmare. So every war begins with the leaders saying this is going to be a short war. Every single war, especially the ones that go on for years and years. So anyway, neoconservatism, in my opinion, and I'd love to debate anyone that disagrees with me, by the way. If you are in favor of all of these wars, and you're in favor of all of these deficits and perpetual spending on war and all of these people that want us to have blind loyalty to foreign countries and whatever. Is it even in Israel's best interest to be at war with Iran right now? Obviously, Iran, when we're at war with Iran, we're at war indirectly with Russia, China, and Iran, and other countries as well. So most people didn't realize that. Is the war winnable? The only way we can win is to get unconditional surrender by Iran, according to President Trump. I don't think that's going to happen. So it's just another nightmare. Iran has far more weapons and bombs and missiles and drones than people had anticipated. So that's the neoconservative nightmare, is to bankrupt the United States with their forever wars and their forever unwinnable wars. So I'd love to see if any neoconservatives want to defend what I consider to be their indefensible viewpoints. And it's destroying the country, it's destabilizing the world, and we shouldn't be enemies with China, and we shouldn't be enemies with Russia. And we need to realize that the United States has so many resources unto itself within the United States. We don't need to try to control the whole world for resources or whatever. It's not possible anyway. A lot of power is going to China. China's a rapidly growing economy, and other countries as well. A lot of power is going to Asia, and there's a lot of wealth in the Middle East. And a lot of people think we could get a lot of American military bases in the Middle East will be closing, because it's really debatable whether or not they even want us there at this point. So anyway, I'd love to hear what people have to say, and especially if you disagree with me, I wouldn't even mind doing a debate with people that disagree with me on this issue, because I really believe this issue could end the United States the way we know it, bankrupt the United States, turn the whole world against the United States, and perhaps even cause World War III. It's that important of an issue. So if you disagree with what I said, that's great. I'd love to hear you respond. And if you're passionate about it, I'd love to debate anyone that disagrees with what I've said here. Mark Dice did a great job, and I wish everyone a great day. Thank you.